So I did want to talk about the Clark Dairy, sort of a local success story that I'm just so happy to be part of. Just a little history. This is a 5-generation dairy in our area. The youngest generation, his name is Kyle Clark, and he recently started processing milk in early 2020. This has taken him about 3 years. Prior to this, he studied the local market for dairy products. He had gone to Morrisville for dairy production and processing. He worked at the Morrisville College Creamery during that time. And when he graduated, he came to us and told us that he wanted to start up some value-added business. And I'm telling you, we did several marketing plans over the course of 3 years. I mean, business plans with just everything, soup to nuts. And we never seemed to get it off the ground. But last year, he was convinced that his local research showed that people wanted a local milk and would buy such a product. And I was like, fluid milk? Are you sure you want to do fluid milk? He said, I want to be the milk of choice for local people. He wanted his milk to be marketed hyper locally, like it's in Delaware County, basically. So he started with this brand development and image, and he was working with us, but I encouraged him to go to the IDA because there was a wealth of information there and people who could keep him on track. And he started with probably the 3rd iteration of a business plan more than a year ago. So during this time, he spent quite a bit of time at the Cornell Dairy Science Lab to take classes on quality and low temperature pasteurization. His big thing was taste. And like everybody wants their milk to taste the best it can be. And so he learned a lot there, and he looked at his resources at the farm. Now, this is a very, very busy farm. They milk 200 cows. He's got a grandfather and a father totally engaged in the farm production aspect. And he was also engaged with farm production, actually doing the crops, milking the cows. He was, became a partner in the operation. And then he was trying to do this on the side, come up with this plan. And, things are crazy there on a regular day without the processing. And so we got over to economic development, and we needed support. So he decided to use this existing building on the farm, which is a historic building. I don't know, they were probably just using it for storage, but as it ended up, it's probably going to be too small in the long run, but it worked to get his boots on the ground in this very pretty building, and he didn't have to actually build anything from scratch. And when we talk about resources and using existing resources, this was one of them. So he during this time, his dad really, I don't know if he had a lot of buy-in early, but by the time economic development came around and kind of wanted buy-in from the other partners too, because he was part of this dairy, but he needed he didn't have any capital at this time. He was graduated from college. He didn't have a whole lot of money to put into this, but economic development wanted some buy-in from the existing partners. So as it worked out, he was able to obtain a loan from the IDA, and the idea is that for however many people you hire part of that loan is forgiven. And this is not confidential because he was on our 90th annual Delaware County Dairy Tour, and they talked about all these things. All of a sudden, he was bottling milk, maybe in the winter. It was, I don't know, I think he might have started in February, January, February, on a small scale. And then all of a sudden, when COVID hit, people wanted this milk. We had to put a cooler out front of this building, and it's extremely successful. I can't get milk there if I go after 4 o'clock. It's in all the local stores, and he's now expanding to butter. He does milk, low-fat milk, skim milk, chocolate milk in varying sizes, and single-serve sizes, and he's in the Big M in Walton. He does half and half. And so it's become a crazy place, even worse than it was before. So luckily, Kyle has a twin who wanted nothing to do with the farm operation. But interestingly enough, he did want to come and help with this value-added product. So it worked out really well that another family member came back to the farm who had left, and Kyle's clone, his twin, is also in the milk delivery business. But I did want to say that it took several years to make this happen, and it is happening, and I'm very excited for Kyle. So if you know about the Clark Farm milk, you can get on the website, you can look at it. It's just really a success story that also came about recently. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jim, who's going to talk about the Lucky Dog Farm.
Lucky Dog Farm, it's about a 95-acre organic farm in Hamden in Delaware County. The owner, Rich Giles, had experience working on a commercial dairy farm in South Carolina or somewhere in the South, but really wanted to start an organic dairy farm. And he knew that New York City was the market he wanted to target. So he began looking for, land, resources, a farm he could purchase, in that area. So, and he said, it's rare when you can plan to start a farm or a business, knowing where your market is, instead of worrying about how you're going to get to your market. He's trying to build his business where proximity to where the market was. So he found some good land there, and he also discovered that the New York City market they're trying to reach, some of those customers were actually vacationing and weekending near where his farm was. So not only was going to the New York City to sell his products part of the plan, but he discovered that he could do a lot right there from the farm. And he opened a retail store right there at the farm, and was able to, that first year, just build a pretty good clientele just there at, without needing to go very far. It's funny, he said when he started this whole operation, the fantasy was to have a small family farm, and he wouldn't have all the stress of, the commercial operation that he left. But as he discovered, as anyone discovers, when you're running a business of any size, if you're the owner, it's always stressful. It's always, full-time, 80, 100 hours a week of working. So it's more a matter of how many people you have working with you. So anyway, but so the following year, 2001, they did expand into the farmers markets, into New York City, and also some regional, local farmers markets and restaurants. And that was their game plan for a number of years. But then as they had young children, and they started thinking about, they really wanted to spend more time with their family. I guess I just back up. This case study is really how a farm business transitions through several changes, both business driven and, personal lifestyle choices. So they decided to concentrate more on a wholesale market plan, not need to go and spend all day at the markets in the city. They wanted to be around their family more. And they had actually thought this would be a more profitable business plan because you're not spending all those labor hours standing, face to face with the customer. You can really, you package your orders and you deliver them, and then you're back, and hopefully, you spend more time with family and reduce some of your overhead costs of actually direct marketing. Discover what they discovered, and what we know from our farm as well is the direct market does take a lot of labor and a lot of time, but the prices are always adjustable to help you maintain your margins. Whereas in the wholesale market, prices are not as flexible, and depending on where your markets are, you can at times be selling it at losses. So they said at the end of the year, their margins were pretty much the same. They cut out a lot of labor, but they lost the ability to control their prices when you're in the wholesale market. So, those are things to consider, like, again, what is your customer base and what are you targeting? And when you get into the wholesale market, it is less sales labor, but less price control. So those are things to consider, and basically what it is you want to focus your time on. Sometimes having the lower income is worth not needing to manage, a dozen people or more. Managing people sometimes difficult. So it's something you need to consider. So in 2010, they returned to the farmers markets and expanded restaurant accounts, both locally and in the city, and trying to do a combination of that, that direct customer retail at the farmers markets, plus having the restaurant wholesale accounts, which were a little more price stable because generally those restaurants want your product and not, they're just not substituting yours for something they can buy from a general food wholesaler. So you can find the market you want, and also be able to actually, it's nice exposure for your farm as well, because many of those restaurants will feature your farm and your products. He actually at this time also took on a partner, and it was a very interesting dynamic. His partner was very business oriented, data driven. Make very logical decisions on everything, and try new approaches. Whereas Rich kind of liked the way he was doing things, and he liked the products he was growing, and it was the crops he was growing. So it was an interesting dynamic of how they decide to meld those two things together. Like, why not have a new crop mix? And it becomes challenging at times. And I think in any time when there's an equal partnership in the business, there's always going to be a challenge of one version of where you want to go, based on someone, especially someone who's been there and they're set in their ways, and now someone new comes in. And one example they gave was Rich only wanted to grow heirloom tomatoes because he loved them. They're beautiful. It's like what his customers have always wanted. But it turned out, they're very expensive. And so they started growing both heirloom and some more commercial varieties. So the heirlooms are expensive, so a customer can buy one nice heirloom tomato or a quart of the regular tomatoes. So their sales actually went up when they had a more affordable product they could offer to their customers. So it wasn't what Rich had always considered his market to be. There was another market there that he had not tapped into. And then, of course, in the bad weather year, the commercial varieties survive pretty well, and you still have a product to sell, whereas the heirlooms are generally not as resistant to weather weather conditions. So again, bringing on the partner was very good for the business. As I said, he was a very data-driven partner. He's always looking at the numbers, and they always had good record keeping as far as what they were seeding and what they were planting. So they knew how much they were seeding in the greenhouse, how much they were planting in the fields. But then, you know, when you start deciding what the yield is, so you know what your harvest is, but you still don't know, unless you know what your sales are, you still don't know the whole story. Because you could, you know, you don't know how much you're leaving in the field that you're not harvesting. You don't know what you're losing between harvest and sales. So, you know, you need good record keeping all the way along so that you know, if you're seeding, 1,000 head of lettuce, and through your sales report, you're only actually ever selling 600. So where's the loss? You're not harvesting where you're planting. Are you losing it in, after harvesting? So these are the type of data that is very useful in a business, but you need someone who's very driven to collect that data. Collecting the data in any kind of an operation like this is one of the more challenging aspects. And so they then, in 2014, there was a lot of discussion around the state, a lot of interest in food hubs, which were never really very well defined, other than that, you're accumulating product and taking it somewhere else. But are they cooperatives? A lot of people, just bring the product together. Who's controlling where it's sold? So food hubs in general were very complex organizations and very different across the state. But he knew there was a real demand for that. There were a lot of farmers in the area who really wanted access to New York City. So they felt that by collectively bringing their product together, having a good storage facility, and then, all sharing, the cost of getting that product to New York City, it's only taking one person's time instead of everybody going down there. So it seemed like a really good opportunity for the farmers in the area to coordinate in this marketing venture. But of course, from Rich's perspective, it became really a packing and shipping company. As you're coordinating pallets of delivery for delivery. So in some cases, you're collecting product from multiple farms for one customer in the city, or you're splitting delivery from one farm to multiple customers. Like one farm come in, he's got like 10 customers he needs to get his product to. He's just dropping his stuff off at the store or at the food hub. You have to split it all up, get it to the right places. And if there are quality issues, like who's dealing with the quality issues and loss issues. So, it is challenging to run any kind of a cooperative effort, whether it's marketing or selling or whatever it is. And plus, then you also have to deal with, the truck maintenance and breakdowns and the time and aggravation of that delivery, who's doing all that. So he eventually realized he was more of a trucking company than, this ideal of a food hub and cooperative effort to get things to market. So they, and this is where like a couple of our case studies kind of meld together. At the time, he was trying to back out of the food hub business. The 607 CSA here in Delaware County or Otsego County was looking to expand, their outreach and how do they get into market? How do they work with the farmers they have to get product into farther markets? So the 607 CSA is now using the food hub facilities at Lucky Dog Farms, and it's a very nice, melding of the two enterprises. And now Rich, they have access to those markets that they wanted to, and they have someone else running that food hub business and taking control of the process. So it's interesting how things don't always, your plan when you start doesn't always how you end up, but the fact that you just keep going, adjusting, looking at what you're doing and trying to make those adjustments. Right now, they're looking at online sales, which little different from food delivery, like instead of home delivery, they're looking at, can you package up the stuff and ship it somewhere, ship it to someone. So you're not driving around, you're shipping them a package of whatever they're ordering, which turns out not to be very, shipping perishable products is challenging. And I think they decided that is probably not going to work. But they did give it a try, and that's what I think right now they're just kind of settling in to transition the farm from Rich to his partner, and that's where the future is for this farm. It's going to be, and that's what the partnership is for, really. You have a younger person coming in to take over control from someone who's looking at, how do I phase out of this venture? So that's it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
There's a slide that is somehow slipped out of my presentation. It's on your handout, but there are 7 questions that we are going to consider for next week in the beginning of the session. If anyone would like to present their ideas, these are the 7 questions. Is there a genuine need for the product or service? Does it solve a problem? Is the product or service consistent with trends? Who is the target customer? Do I have or can I get the necessary resources? How will the product or service get to markets? Who is my competition? And is there a margin for profit? Now, you don't have to answer all those questions, but it's a stepping off point for next week. If you would like to present your idea to the group as the larger group, just send me an email and I'll put you on the list. And we'll do a few in the beginning. Just this is going to be like 2 minutes. And we're going to cut you off if you go over that. But we'd like to just see where you're at. And we were going to do another breakout group, but we're not going to because of time. In your notebooks, you can always just make one of these. If you don't have a notebook, you just draw one of these. It's a SWOT analysis. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Take your idea and try to come up with this along with answering those other questions. Now, if you have a notebook, there's a worksheet or 2 in there with a SWOT analysis and answering the questions. I want you to fill out the worksheets on your resources. A lot of people don't consider all of the resources. You've got physical, you've got mental, you've got, credit rating, you've got all kinds of resources. Just put them down so that you can use that to your advantage at a later time. So we will discuss each product as a group and test the concepts. That's the idea. We're just kind of testing these. Is there a market? Does the product solve a problem? I always like to think about Post-it notes. I remember when they came out, I knew some professors that had Post-it notes all over their walls. I mean, it was such a cool invention. And whoever invented them made tons and tons of money. I mean, it solved a problem. You didn't need a paper clip, it was just perfect. So does it solve a problem? Who is the customer? Can I get the resources or do I have the resources? How can I get it to market? Who is my competition? And is there a margin for profit? So we're going to have some, we might have a little feedback. It's not the presentations that we're going to make in the 5th and 6th classes. But if you want to present something and you want a little feedback, just send me an email and I'll put you on the list and I'll call on you and it will be the first part of next week's class. And we'll take maybe a total of 15 or 20 minutes to go over them. But we won't be going over them in breakout groups because I want the whole group together for that. Any other questions